Building a fire pit in 5 minutes or less. Go.
So the first step was picking a good spot to build the Flagstone Patio and fire pit. The obvious choice was this nice patch of grass visible from our kitchen window. However, as we started digging, we quickly realized that the roots of the tree in the corner here were incredibly shallow and it would be impossible to dig around them. This meant that we had to repair all of the damage we'd already done, as well as find a new spot to dig. Also, throughout these first few days, we took our first of countless trips to Home Depot for new tools, as we'd already broken several. Our new dig site was on the opposite corner of the yard, and as we were already planning on removing most of these trees, we weren't overly concerned about cutting any roots we may find. We staked out an area, which was slightly larger than our original design, and began to dig. We had to dig 6 inches down on all sides, and just a tad deeper on the edges for some extra stability. We didn't encounter many roots, but the ones that we did have to go through, the Sawzall made quick work of. Once we dug down 6 inches throughout, we had to go a bit deeper in the middle in order to run a sprinkler line for the landscaping work we planned to do after completing the pit. We didn't know it yet, but this was the first of many trenches that we'd have to dig. Now that the pit excavation was complete, it was time to put down 4 inches of compacted gravel to serve as the foundation for our patio. We tamped the gravel into 1-inch layers and just built upon them one at a time, checking level as we went. After the gravel, we put down about 1 inch of construction-grade sand to serve as the leveling agent for our flagstone, once again raking it into consistent layers and then tamping it down. The dogs were very interested in what was going on throughout this entire process, especially Toby, and he showed his enthusiasm by leaving us little presents in the sand. Now that our foundation was complete, it was time to shop for rocks. We purchased 4 tons of flagstone from a stoneworks in Fall City, and it was delivered on 2 massive pallets. We needed some help to move it all back to our job site, and that's where the local muscle came in the form of some friends paid with pizza. It was at this point that things started getting complicated. After doing some additional math and research, I discovered that our original plan of using a propane tank to fuel our fire pit was no longer viable, due to the fact that we were now building on a significantly larger area than the original site, which is what I did my initial research on. I forgot to adjust the gas calculations to account for the larger pit, which proved to be a very costly mistake, both in labor and finances. We needed to run a 1-inch gas pipe from our meter 80 feet away to the fire pit. This doesn't sound so tough, but unfortunately for us, regulation for gas piping is rather strict, and it required us to dig down 24 inches to lay the pipe, including under the sidewalk, which was one of the most physically strenuous things I've ever done. On our main trenching day, we worked from 8 a.m. until 1 in the morning, and we still didn't finish. It turns out that the soil underneath the surface is more rock than dirt, which the trenching machine didn't like as we broke 2 of them throughout the day. One of the toughest parts was clearing the tunnel underneath the sidewalk. It took me 8 hours of digging and chipping away over the course of multiple days to finally drive a conduit through. The main obstacle was a massive rock over 1 foot in diameter right in the middle of my path. That alone took about 5 hours, and I named it Moby Dick, as it truly was my greatest adversary. That absolute unit of a rock is now painted white and sits as a trophy on top of all of the other rocks we dug up throughout this project. We finally got the gas line installed and went about repairing our yard. This truly had turned into much more of an ordeal than we had originally expected, and none of our yard emerged unscathed. Unfortunately, I don't have much video of the rest of the project, as we needed the power cord used for the camera in order to power our various tools used to cut and shape the flagstone. Over the course of several days, we cut all of our flagstone to shape, and then after a short break of a few more days, we got to work on leveling. Leveling proved to be easier than expected, and with the exception of a few troublesome stones, went by quite quickly. We then filled the cracks between the stones with sand and went about constructing the fire pit itself. After picking out some nice bricks from the gardening section of Home Depot, we got to work. We did some tinkering with the gas lines to find a fit that worked for both our key valve and the bricks we had chosen. It took a few days and many more trips to Home Depot, but we finally found a fit that worked. Finally, we used a hammer drill to make holes in our concrete bricks in order to mount our installation collars for the fire pan, and at this point we were pretty much done. After installing the burner, we added our fire media, and that was it. The project began in early May and lasted until late August, with some short breaks, but for the most part we worked on it every day. It was hard work and took hundreds of hours to accomplish, but I'm glad that it gave me and my dad so much time together, as well as giving us something to do while quarantined, and I'm very proud of the results. Unfortunately, I'm only getting to use it a handful of times before heading back to school, but now I suppose I have something to look forward to when I return.